morning, Teller Bear. We're now on day 101 of the seven-figure climb. And in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go over my strategy session questions with you. I'm going to kind of walk you through how I do strategy sessions. I think I've done this before in the past, but I want to do a little review because in some of the future videos, we're going to be talking about, consulting with clients and your likelihood of getting results with clients and getting them to come move forward with you. And so I just thought I would kind of do this. And again, this is more for review purposes. If we went through these in the past, to kind of set up some of the other videos. And so, when I first started out doing coaching, I made 5,000 in 4 days, and I did it just simply by getting people on phone calls. And when I first started out, I was delivering a lot of value in groups, and I would just make extremely valuable content posts. And then people would sometimes, there would be a couple of things that would happen. A lot of those posts would start dialogues. I would be having conversations with 3 or 4 people within those posts. They would ask a question and I would answer it. And so I'd be talking to 2, 3 or 4 people there. And sometimes they would ask me a question in the thread and say, yeah, and they'd ask me a question I can't answer by writing it there because it would be too long, right? And so what I would do is I would say, hey, I can't really answer that in a comment, in a reply. Can I send you a DM? And so I can tell you, I never sent cold DMs. I think in my opinion, I'm sure there's a place for that. But if you're selling coaching, consulting, helping people to move forward, for me, it's just not a fit. I don't want to chase, I want to attract. And so a number of things would happen. Sometimes I would ask permission only because they were asking a question I couldn't answer there. Now, the other thing that would happen is a lot of people would just simply send me a DM from the conversation we were having. And so we would get that as well. So they would send me a DM and they would ask a question that way. And then sometimes I would get people who would say, hey, Manny, I've been silently stalking you for a while and you said something the other day and I have a few questions about it. And so originally I was just delivering a lot of value in DMs and answering these questions. And what I ultimately did is I just basically would say to these people, would you like to jump on a quick call with me? I'm sure I could add some value to what you're doing. So I didn't call it a discovery call. I didn't call it a strategy session. I just would simply say, would you like to jump on a quick call and see if I can add some value to what you're doing? And by the way, everything I'm giving you here, you can use it. This isn't, IP that you're not allowed to use unless you give me money or anything. Like I said, if you get some value from any of this, certainly take it. And I don't remember where that came from. I don't think it was Frank Kern. I certainly got a lot of my strategy session mindset from Frank Kern as far as attraction, but I don't know where I got that from. And so when I first started out, I was simply driving people from Messenger or from conversations in Facebook into a DM conversation, and then I would offer to jump on a call with them. And in a lot of cases, I would go from a DM conversation right to a phone call. As a matter of fact, what I always did, I made it very easy for them to call. I would basically say, hey, I'd love, that's a great question. I'd like to help you with that. Would you like to jump on a quick call? I'm sure I could add some value to what you're doing. And I would give them my number right in the DM. And so what that would do is a lot of people would call me right then. They would just, so I'm basically doing strategy sessions cold. And in my opinion, we're going to give you a lot of context and content here. You need to be able to do these cold. You need to be able to wake up from a dead sleep and be able to it's having a conversation that, number one, demonstrates that you can help them by helping them. And number two, determines if they're a fit. And then number three, if they're a fit, we make them an offer. And that's what it would look like. And so that worked really, really well for me. Cold DM or having them send me a DM from a conversation and doing it that way. And then the other thing that I would do is I would make posts in my own group, and I would say, hey, if you're struggling with anything, if you need help, creating your first course, getting your first coaching client, feel free to shoot me a DM and I'll be glad to jump on a call and see if there's a way I can help you and give you some insights on how I did it. And that, like, those things work really, really well. Now, later on, I added a pre-strategy session questionnaire, and I did that using Schedule Once. And so what I did is I started sending people to a scheduling link to schedule calls with me when they couldn't jump on a call immediately. Now I'm going to walk you through this. I want you to understand what I'm saying here. For the most part, a lot of people would just immediately call me. Sometimes they couldn't call me right then. And what I was doing then at first is I would say, okay, what time, when do you want to talk and what time? And we would do that all in Messenger, and I would write everything down. But unfortunately, the time zones, were a little, I was starting to get a little funny with the time zones and mess that up. And that's the reason I went to sending them to a Zoom link, to a scheduling link through Schedule Once. And when I did that, I went ahead and created a pre-strategy session questionnaire in there. And so what you don't want to do, and that's the reason I'm walking you through this, what you do not want to do is you do not want to use Schedule Once or one of these other platforms to essentially put time between you and getting them on the phone so they can answer a bunch of questions for you. I certainly did that, but my goal was to actually get on a call as soon as possible. When they need help, the best time you can help them is now. But if you can't help them now, then what we do is we would send them. And so this is what I did. Continued to have conversations through Facebook posts, continued to have people have conversations with me in DM, and continued to have people jump on calls immediately with me. But if they couldn't do it immediately, then I would give them a link. So I would say, hey, I'd be glad to jump on a call with you and see if I can add some value. And I'd give them my phone number, and then they'd say, it's not a good time. Can we do it? And if they said tomorrow at 3, I went ahead and just set it for tomorrow at 3. But if they were going 2 or 3 days out, what I would then do is just give them a link so they could schedule a call. And I did that. And this is another important point. I didn't do that so that they would answer a bunch of questions for me. I did that so I would get the time zones right. And then the added benefit of that is I was able to give them a questionnaire so they could pre-answer a lot of these questions before we got on a call with them. And the reason I'm walking you through this is because a lot of you are going to do this, and I'm going to show you something. This is, I don't know, 15 or 20 or 25 videos I've done in the last few months, maybe even less than that. And generally within reason, I'm following a script kind of, or I know I'm going to talk about, I have a plan. But when you're doing strategy sessions, you should be able to do these on the fly. And a lot of you, what you're going to do is you're going to have a script, but you're going to want to go ahead and what you're going to want to do is get that information first before you get on the call with them. And I'm going to tell you, don't do that. What you don't want to do is put a lot of time between them talking to you and them asking you the questions, because when they're having a conversation with you in Messenger or on Facebook, that's the most interested they're going to be in working with you. And if the further out you go from that, the less likely they're going to be in working with you. And what I'm saying here is you've hit on a pain, you've hit on a nerve with a post or some content that struck some pain in someone, and it created conversation, and they want more help to alleviate that pain. And the best time you can do that is right then. And so my advice to you is there's certainly a number of ways to do this, but my advice is start out doing it this way. Later on, when you're scaling, when you're doing things really big, you can create systems. But when you're first starting out, you need to get really, really good at doing the strategy sessions. And so I'm gonna go through the strategy sessions that I do real quick here, strategy session questions, and I'm going to give those to you. And you can certainly use anything I'm giving you here. But my advice is, you don't want to follow a complete script. And this is the thing. It is not a question and answer session. It's not an interview. It is a conversation. And so when I ask a question and they answer it, there's usually conversation about their answer somewhere a little bit. And then I ask another question. It's not, I go through and ask them 25 questions and they answer one and I go to another. And it's not an interview. It's really a conversation. And like I said, the reason I'm telling you is not to try as much as possible not to be scripted, because if you're not scripted or you're not reading from a script, you're going to be very, very conversational. And that's what it needs to be about. And so that's what I want you to get from what we're talking about here. So I started out delivering value in Facebook groups. In my personal later on in my personal Facebook group, I would make posts. People would comment on those posts. We would have conversations. It would lead to people sending me DMs, and then I would say, do you want to jump on a Zoom call or do you want to jump on a phone call? And that would lead to a call. And then later on, because I was messing the time zones up, we started sending them when people couldn't get immediately on a call or like in the next day, I would give them a place to set up a call. And so the next thing I'm going to answer here, because a lot of people will say, I've got all these strategy sessions set up. I had 20 strategy sessions set up, and I only had 5 people get on the call with me. If you're getting that kind of result, so if you have a lot of people who are scheduling calls and then not getting on calls with you, it's because you're setting it up wrong from the beginning. And it's probably because you're chasing instead of attracting. I can tell you within reason, 3,000 strategy sessions, maybe 5 people didn't show up. And what's interesting, it might be a few more than that. It might be 7 or 8. But what's interesting about that, it's probably over half of those. So if it's 8, 4 of them reached out before the call and said, Manny, something's came up, I can't do it. And then 4 complete no-shows. And by the way, when you have a no-show, don't let them reschedule. Don't let them waste your time twice. That's not what you do. So like my deal is if it's that they don't show up on the call, it's a hard no for me. And that's the bottom line. I'm not going to, they're not in enough pain. You want to be talking to people who are kind of in emergency room pain help. That's what they're looking for. And we're going to talk about that in another video. And that's the reason I'm kind of going through this now. And that was a long time spent to set this up, but I'll just kind of walk you through the conversation I have with people. And so your first question, you can ask, anything that you want. You can ask a bonding question. The Dan Sullivan question is really, really good. And the Dan Sullivan question, and I probably screw it up, if you and I were to meet 3 years from now, what would your life look like personally and professionally for you to feel that you were successful? And it opens up a lot of conversations. You're essentially basically asking a person, what do you want? What is the ultimate goal here? And what's interesting is they will paint you a picture of what they want. And then you can say, well, what's your current situation? And that's what that would look like. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that with the other questions. And so you can do the Dan Sullivan question. And then the other thing you can do is, how did you get involved? How did you get started in this business? People love to tell the story about how they got involved in their business. It's a big thing. It's like, how did the 2 of you meet? People love telling the story about how the 2 people met. And so that's the thing. And I use that question a lot. I would ask, how did you get involved in this business? And so my first question is probably going to be, what is the ultimate goal of your business? And a lot of times when you ask them, what's the ultimate goal, they'll generally give you a number, which is really what you're looking for. And so they might say let's say they say it's going to be $1 million. So they say the ultimate goal is to be doing $1 million a year. And then the next question I'm going to ask is, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, so you want to do $1 million a year. Tell me this, what's your current situation? How much are you doing now? And they will say they're doing 200,000. And so they're at 200,000, they want to be at $1 million, and the gap is 800,000, and you're selling into that gap, and you really need to focus on that. There's a lot of nuance that goes on here. Now, so what I basically just asked them, where are you at now and where do you want to be? They're at 200,000, they want to be at $1 million. And my next question is, how long have you been stuck? Very, very, very important question. How long they've been in this pain is extremely important, because if someone's been in emergency room pain for 2 minutes, not that important. If they've been in this pain for 3 or 5 or 7 years, it's very important. And so if someone's and this is another thing, and you can use this, and I don't really do it this way, but I'm going to walk you through something. So let's say they've been stuck at 200,000 for 3 years. They want to be at $1 million. They're at 200,000. They've been at 200,000 for 3 years. What you can now do is you can basically, at the end, if you want to hard sell, you can say, look, you're at 200,000, you want to be at $1 million, you've been stuck there for 3 years. In the last 3 years, being stuck at 200,000 has cost you $2.4 million. And so you can continue to stay stuck, but if you want to move forward, we've got a solution if that's something you're interested in investing in. And I can tell you, I don't use that close. I don't do it that way. I'm going to walk you through how I do it, but you can use that number to leverage getting them to move forward. You can essentially say, staying here has cost you X amount of dollars. And every day that you stay here, it's costing you more money. And we can show you a solution that's going to cost money, but it's going to not going to cost anywhere near as much as it's costing you staying where you're at. And so that's what I want you to think about. So what we got now, where they at, where they want to be, how long have they been stuck there? And then my next question is, why do you feel like you haven't got to the million? And when you ask that question, you won't generally get a lot of marketing answers or a lot of business answers. What you will generally get is a lot of drama. You will get, the wife was sick, the husband was sick, the wife left me, partner ran off with all the money. You'll get some drama and dilemma and things going on. A lot of times you won't immediately get what the real problem is, but you'll get some insights as to what's going on here and why they've been stuck. And once in a while you'll have someone say, we don't have enough leads, but generally you don't get that. Like I said, what you will find here, when you ask this question, there's usually a lot of drama and a lot of problems and all of that go on. And so now we know where they're at, where they want to be, how long they've been stuck, what they feel has been holding them back. And then at that point, you can, and at that point, I'm going to start going into marketing asset questions even deeper. So what is your average transaction size? So, what transaction size is important. So if they're at 200,000, their average transaction size is $1,000. We know they need 200 transactions to do 200,000, and they need 1,000 transactions to do $1 million. So what is your average transaction size? That's going to be my next question. And then the question after that is, if you talk to 100 people, how many of those people do you sell to? Is it 3? Is it 5? Is it 7? Is it 10? And generally they'll give you a number. Now, if they say, and you got to ask, if you talk to 100 people or you get 100 walk-ins or 100 people call or whatever, however they're getting their leads, but essentially you want to use the number of 100, because what you're getting here is you're getting a conversion rate. So if they talk to 100 people and they're closing 10 of them, their conversion rate is 10%. If they're closing 20 of them, their conversion rate is 20%. If they're closing 50, their conversion rate is 50%. Because based on the answer to that question, we know if they have a conversion problem or a lead generation problem. They're closing most of the people they talk to, they need more leads. If they're closing very few of the people they're talking to, they need a better system for closing, better system for conversion. And so that's going to be the question. So basically, what's your average transaction size? If you talk, if you talk to 100 people, how many people buy? And then my next question, very smart question, a question about no one asks is, so if you talk to 100 people and 10 people buy, what do you do with the 90 people that didn't buy? Because if their conversion rate is low, there's a lot of money sitting there, underutilized asset, underperforming asset. They've got 90 leads that they didn't close. What are they doing to reclose them? Is there a follow-up process? And what's interesting is a lot of times when you ask this question, it's a deer in the headlights look. They haven't thought at all about what they're doing with the unconverted leads, or they're not really following up. And a lot of times you just need to create a follow-up sequence for the people who didn't buy on that initial interaction. And that's what you want to think about there. And then and so we basically got that information, and then I'm going to delve a little bit deeper. We're going to ask them questions about, a good question to ask is like, if we were able to help you to get 100 to 300 or 500 leads in the next 30 or 60 days, would you be able to handle that kind of an influx of traffic? And it's an important question, but it's also, you're seeding in the fact that you could possibly help them grow very, very, very fast. But you also need to ask it because a lot of times they're at full capacity, right? They're at full capacity, so they can't handle the leads that are coming in. They're behind on the process to fulfill the leads. And the reason you want to know this is because if they come in, if they're talking to 100 people, they're closing 10, and it's taking them all of the manpower they've got to fulfill on the people they're closing. We don't want to increase leads. They don't have a lead generation problem. They don't have a conversion problem. They have either an average transaction size problem. They're not charging enough. They're not selling, they're not charging enough to get to the number. Because like I said, if they can't handle more leads, if they can't handle more deal flow, we got to figure out another way to get them to the number, the million. And what we're going to do there is we're going to figure out ways to charge more, sell at a higher, charge more, get more money per client, and things like that. Because if they can only deal with 10 people, what we got to do is figure out how to get more money from the 10 people they're dealing with. And you want to think about that as well. And so as you're asking this, what you're doing is you're building a picture of where they're at, what it looks like, how long they've been there, how big the business is. And then you're going to ask questions like, how many people have you served in the past? So how many buyers have you dealt with? So how many successful customers have you had? Do you have testimonials from those people? Do you have success stories? Are you keeping track of that? Do you have a database of buyers? Extremely valuable. Do you have a database of prospects? Do you have an email list? And another really good question is, when someone buys from you, how soon do you follow up to thank that person for buying? Is it within an hour, or 24 hours, or 48 hours, or 72 hours? And then how are you following up? So are we calling people and thanking them for purchasing? Are we sending them an email and thanking them for purchasing? Are we sending them a letter? And the better the higher transaction size, the better the contact should be. And that's what you want to think about there. And the reason we're doing this is because a lot of people, they don't follow up after the sale. And so not only are we going to ask them about follow-up, we're going to the next question we're going to ask them is, once a person buys from you, how soon do they buy again? So that's the next question we're going to ask. So are they buying within 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days? And are they tracking those things? And then the next question is, your average transaction size is $1,000. What's the lifetime value of your customer? And the lifetime value of a customer is essentially how much they will spend with the person over a lifetime. So if they don't know that, what you simply do is say, well, when someone buys from you, how many more times do they buy? So if they buy once and then they buy 4 more times, and the person's spending $1,000 with them, the lifetime value is $5,000. And you want to think about lifetime value. And the reason lifetime value is important is because if we know that ultimately we're going to get $5,000 on the back end total revenue from anyone who comes into the funnel, instead of just $1,000, we can spend a lot more money to put people into the funnel. And that's what you want to think about. And a lot of people don't think about lifetime value, and lifetime value is it's extremely important, because the more a client is worth, the more we can spend to get the client, and the more we can invest into that relationship to keep the person buying over and over and over. And so what I'm doing, all I'm doing here, I'm telling you, is I'm asking marketing asset questions. I'm looking for marketing assets. I'm looking for underutilized marketing assets. I'm looking for holes in the process, holes in the system, things that they're not doing that they probably should be doing. Now, once I've got all of this, so now this is what we know. We know how, pretty much know how long. We're going to ask them how long they've been in business. We got that information. We know how much revenue they're doing. We know how much revenue they want to do. We know what their transaction size is. We know how many people they close if they talk to 100. We know what their lifetime value is. And like I said, if they don't know the lifetime value, there's a number of ways you can get that by asking different questions. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, so take me from cold to sold. Take me through the buying process, how you get this person into the funnel, and how you get them to buy on the other end, what that looks like. And the reason we're doing this is we want to look for efficiencies in the funnel, and then we want to look for inefficiencies in the funnel. What are they doing right and what are they doing wrong? And that's the reason I'm having them walk me through this, because there may be steps they're doing they shouldn't be doing, and there may be steps they should be doing that they're not doing, like the follow-up. For the people who don't buy, there should be a follow-up in place, and there should be a follow-up system in place for people who don't move forward. And that's what you want to think about there. And that's the reason I ask that. And while I'm doing this, I am trying, and like I said, I can tell you, it sounds like an interview, but it's not, because I can tell you, based on the answers they give, we will have we'll have a lot of mini conversations before the next question. In most cases, we're going to follow up when they give us a number. And there are reasons for that, because really, like I said, you want to get as accurate information from people as possible. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to assess whether I can help this person or not based on the information they've given me. And if I can help them, I'm going to say, I love your energy. I love your passion. I'm 100% certain I could help you with this. If you're interested in that, I'd like to discuss it. Is that something you'd be interested in, working with me on this? And if they say yes, when they say yes, they're giving you permission to make them an offer. And then I will say, this is how I work with clients. It's X amount of dollars. It's X amount of, and basically I go over the amount, the perimeter, how long the calls are, when the calls are, and I explain that whole structure. So it's It's 20 minutes calls. It's once a week. We're going to do the calls the same time each week. And it's going to be this amount of money. And then this is extremely important. A lot of people miss this. And I say, if that's something you're interested in, I can send you a PayPal link. You can make a payment and we can schedule our first call right now. And if they make the payment, right after they make the payment, I say, okay, what day do you want to do these calls and what time do you want to do them? And you basically do that. You get that information and say, look, what we're going to be doing we're going to be doing them the same time each day, each week. So what I want you to give me is what day would you like to do those? And they will give you a day and time. And you say, okay, we're going to do our first call Monday at 4 p.m. And then I will say the first call is probably going to go a little bit long. And then after that, the calls will be generally 20 minutes, but we have a little bit of time if it goes over a little bit. So they're 20 to 30 minutes each. And that's how I'm doing those. Now, this is the thing. I'm looking for people with marketing assets. I'm looking for people who want to grow. I'm looking for people with a higher average transaction size. Can't really help people selling stuff for $20. So we want a higher average transaction size, 500, 1,000, 200, 500, 1,000, 2,000. The higher the transaction size, the easier it is to get a win for them, because if they're paying you X amount of dollars a month, you want them to get that money back as quick as possible. Well, if the transaction size is low, we got to get them a lot of transactions. If the transaction size is high, we've got to get them very few transactions. And that's the reason, I'm looking for people with higher average transaction size. And then what we're going to do, if they're not a fit, and they're not going to be a fit if transaction size is low, if they don't sound coachable, if they're in an ethereal niche, if they don't have a proven system, if they're a startup and they're still in idea mode, so all of these things. And what I will generally say to the person at that point is, love your energy, love your passion. Doesn't sound like you're quite ready for what I would be doing, but based on what you've told me, here are some things that you should probably do to move forward. And I'll give them generally 3 things they should do to help them. And so that's kind of how I walk them through it. And so the strategy session is a way for you to demonstrate that you can help them by helping them, delivering a lot of value on the call with them. And then when the fit's right, you make an offer. And then when the fit's not right, you still give them some help. And I think it's really valuable to do it that way. You're going to get people on a call that within 10 seconds, they're not going to give you any money. They are 3 months behind on their rent or their mortgage. They're parking their car around the block so it doesn't get repossessed. All kinds of things, right? So, and a lot of times if they're filling out the pre-strategy session questionnaire, there will be indicators on that as well. My advice to you is you should talk to everyone, treat them all the same, because you got to get really good at doing strategy sessions, and better to get really good at doing the conversations with people who might not be a fit than basically doing conversations with a bunch of people who are a fit, but you're not good at it yet. And so you blow a lot of them up. And so my mindset here is, if you're going to screw them up with less qualified people. So I don't generally sell to startups, but I've had probably 1,000 calls with startups, people in idea mode, people just getting something off the ground, because you want to get really, really good at this. And then the other thing is, when you get someone on the call and immediately they can't move forward with you, my mindset has always been, this is the only time I'm ever going to talk to this person. Person clearly probably isn't going to give me any money. And so I'm going to over deliver on this call, because if they can't work with me, so now I can make them a cheerleader. I can give them a lot of value that will cause them to go out and tell people about me. And that's how I would handle it. And this is the other thing: if they're not a fit, we don't make an offer. If they're a fit, we make an offer. If they're not a fit, we just say, based on this, I don't think you're quite ready for me, and these are the next 3 things you should do. And that's what it looks like. And so you'll get a lot of value from that. And just so you know, and because it's very interesting, because I can tell you, we don't call it a strategy session. They didn't sign up to get on a call with me and for me to sell them anything. but I talked to people who were in emergency room pain on Facebook and then in Messenger, and we got on a call. And I've never had anyone upset that I made an offer to them. And I can tell you, because a lot of people are thinking, well, you get these people on the phone and then you make an offer. I only make an offer to people who, one, I only make an offer to people I can help. And two, I only make an offer to people who want my help. And so if they, for whatever reason, say they don't want my help, and I don't think I've ever had that. I don't think I've ever had anyone who really needed my help and said they didn't want it. Now we've talked to people who weren't ready for it financially, and that's fine. But like I said, the reason they're not upset is you delivered so much value before you even got on the call with them. And then when you got on the call, you delivered even more value. And so that's the setup. And I think that's the reason for it. And so we're not tricking anyone. We don't tell them we're going to sell them in the messenger. And we don't, because we don't know if we're going to sell them. We don't know if they're a fit yet. And so that's kind of the way I do it. And so I hope you got some value from that. But I just thought I'd give you that because, like I said, we're going to talk about this stuff a little bit deeper later on. And I want you to understand what the strategy session process looks like. But we'll see you all in the next video. And thanks a lot.